this year at the 2021 Head of the Charles, which is incredible. And you can see the fours getting on the race course. So just to set it up a little bit, this is a 4-rower shell, each rower with one blade. It is referred to as sweep rowing. And so you've got 2 blades on either side of the boat, and you've got a coxswain, and those coxswains are going to typically and probably throughout this field be laying down in the bows of the boats. You see in that red boat there that looks like it's not community rowing, but it looks like community rowing. The coxswain laying down in the bow. It has a steering mechanism, but it becomes very interesting in a head race being in a bow, what's called a bow loader 4 as a coxswain, because there has to be communication between, in this case, the bow woman rower and the coxswain in the event that there are some boats sort of coming up on you from behind. But otherwise, it is actually an advantage not having to look around to 8 rowers, Colleen, as you come down the race course. You've just got a perfect eye line that is unobstructed when you're laying down in the bow.
Yeah, it's fantastic for sprint racing. It can be a bit tricky here. As we've mentioned, it requires a real relationship with the person rowing in the bow seat, so closest to the coxswain, so that they communicate throughout the race. We're looking at Row America Rye at the moment, so another youth powerhouse. So many big names here at the Head of the Charles. So this is Row America Rye coming toward us with bow number 1, able to hold on to that position for now.
Row America Rye, also a somewhat newer youth program, but they have shot to the top. They have won national championships already at Youth Nationals, and they are back. They won by 4 seconds in 2019, 2 years ago, at our previous installment of the Head of the Charles. And you can see at the first timing point there at Riverside Boat Club, they have the 3rd best time so far of the teams that have come through. Does that bow number 1, Row America Rye. Behind them, and you can see just slightly to the left on the picture, that is bow number 2, the Northfield Mount Herman School. And bow number 3 is Nashville. Northfield Mount Herman and Nashville were like within a second of one another, I believe, in 2019.
So riding still with that Row America Rye boat, coxed by Joyce Kang. You can see her cap, her visor, as she prepares to take that Weeks foot bridge. Alex Desart in the bow seat, the 2-seat Elizabeth Madigan, 3-seat Claire Labovitz, and stroking the shell, Ellie Convisor.
And Colleen, we're talking about communication between the bow woman and the coxswain. Quite frankly, if you're the coxswain, you hope that the bow woman never says anything to you, because that means that you have enough speed that nothing is coming into play.
Took that left-hand turn, cut it under the bridge, and now she set herself up with a straight point towards the Anderson. And look at the crowd on the Weeks Bridge. So you can see the crowds lining up. We see them at the Elliott Bridge. It's fantastic spectating.
It is, and it already looks pretty full. We saw them on top of Elliott, totally full already, even at, 8:30 this morning. And it's a little chillier this morning. It's kind of gotten progressively cooler over the weekend from Friday through Sunday, as we see a couple boats coming wide and adjacent to one another through an footbridge where it is a big port turn. It can be done a little bit easier in the 4s than the 8s, simply because the speed isn't quite as fast as an 8. And each rower's one oar, being that there are only 4, make a bigger difference to the course of these boats, and great turns there from those two boats that are connected with one another as they come through, and they look for their point on the next bridge, the Anderson Bridge. And these types of battles that are going on within these head races, they become, and I've talked about it because I recall from being a competitor both at the Head of the Charles and other head race regattas, these are the types of battles that you really remember, because you may only get one per head race depending upon relative speeds. I think on the left is bow number 4, Three Rivers Rowing Association, and then I think that the bow on the right of that picture was bow 8, which is Woodrow Wilson High School. As you see bow 25 coming into the picture, that's our camera that is at Riverside Boat Club. And they are being hotly trailed by bow 24. Again, there's 84 boats, Colleen, in this event. It's going to be about a 30 or 40 minute event. That was Maritime, bow 27.
And now we're riding back up with bow number 8, Woodrow Wilson High School. The oldest high school rowing program in Washington, D.C., and remains the only public school team from the city. So bow number 8, and 3 boats now coming through Weeks. Great turn from the shell that kind of cut it on the inside. We're going to look at their bow number in just a moment. But with 84 entrants, definitely going to be some crews, I think, David, taking these arches together.
Yeah, and our timing stations, obviously, when these, the first couple of bow numbers get to each timing station, it's going to come through and give us new times. But there could be, we have no idea, about 70 at some point in this race that ends up being the fastest boat. So we'll see as we get the pictures. You're seeing a lot in these youth events so far this morning of pretty disparate bow numbers next to one another in some of these shots, because you really have some varying speeds. But 84 entries in the women's Youth 4. As you see there, looks like bow number 9 in the picture.
That's Twin Cities Youth Rowing.
As these entries are coming from all over the nation, this is really the Super Bowl of rowing. This is the biggest fall event. It is the largest rowing event in the world. As you see, another thing to point out there is just that bucket rig. And what does that mean? That means that there are 2 rowers who have oars on the same side and consecutive seats in the boat. As you see, various different types of ways to set a boat up and to make it as proficient as possible and as fast as possible. As we see at that timing station at the Weld Boathouse, Phillips Exeter Academy has about a 1-second lead on Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, that caught my eye too, David. They're having a good race, aren't they? The Phillips Exeter shell coxed by Jacqueline Luke. They started with bow number 11 at the last timing point. They were running first. Of course, these can always reshuffle as the race goes on, but definitely outperforming their seed.
They are, and just looking even at the times that have come through and just the teams, Texas, Nashville, Twin Cities. You have Three Rivers from Pittsburgh. You have NorCal from Northern California. You have Rye, New York. You have Woodrow Wilson from DC. I mean, these are programs from truly all over the nation. As you see on the left side, that appears to be bow number 20, which is West Side out of Buffalo, New York. And they are side by side with bow 18, which is Greenwich Academy, Greenwich, Connecticut.
What a battle going through Weeks Footbridge together. So they'll need to rely on bow 18 to really cut that turn. Another point where you might have your 2-seat drop to really take the port turn tight. But they're doing it in style. They don't need any direction at all. So well done to these coxswains to come through 2 boats together. Ideally, you'd be on the inside, but to get through safely without a collision is the most important thing.
Riding with bow 1, Row America Rye, as they finish the big turn. And we'll see what other competitors are near them relative on the race course. But Row America Rye taking a nice final big turn there, setting up for Elliott and thinking about finishing this race. And they have been sitting in really 3rd place the whole way through in all the timing stations, which you can see is only less than 3 seconds behind that 1st place, unofficially Phillips Exeter. So if Row America Rye can really find speed, if they've left something in the tank to find sort of another gear, Colleen, in this open water that they have in front of them going at bow card 1, they might be able to close that gap.
Yeah, that's right. And they're definitely quite determined to do so, aren't they? They've raced a gutsy race from start to finish. We were back up at the top of the race course. Now we're less than 750 meters to go. Once they get by the Windsor dock, they're closing in really on the last 600 meters or so. And she's got a fabulous course here, all on her own, able to take that last starboard turn, and a wonderful shot as this crew comes by the Windsor dock, Row America Rye.
That's as good as it gets from a broadcast standpoint of a head race. This is a 2021 ahead of the Charles. You've got bow 5, that's NorCal crew out of Redwood City, California, and they are starting to maybe try to pull away from bow 4, Three Rivers Rowing Association out of Pittsburgh, that is just behind them, about a length of open water behind them as they come past the Cambridge Boat Club boathouse. And you can see that crowd. It is totally full, 2 or 3 deep at a minimum already on the Elliott Bridge this morning. And you're going to be watching this event for a while still as we see these low bow numbers. There are 84 entries in this women's Youth 4 event. And both of those coxswains just taking great lines through Elliott.
Bow 5, this is NorCal crew, coached by William Zach, Beth Anderson, coxed by Alexandra Taylor, taking that starboard line. We saw Eleanor power the bow seat. And now riding with Three Rivers, bow number 4, Cassidy Burns in the coxswain seat. Ooh, it's getting tight, isn't it?
This is pretty spicy coming around the turn. Bow 10 trying to track down bow 9 at the end of the big turn. And so we'll see what happens here. That bow very close to the tip of the stern of bow 10. So bow 10 is trying to hold off bow 9, trying to keep the course as we're coming back up with Row America Rye. And they are taking their last 5 to 10 strokes to finish their piece here at the head of the Charles.
Great race for Phillips Exeter. If you look at the graphic up above, all of these times, to be clear, are unofficial. So before any penalties are assessed, completely unofficial. Of course, the race hasn't even ended yet, but getting a look at some of those early times, it's a good day for Phillips.
It is. What a shot. I see the Lone Star flag there.
Oh, yeah.
Of Texas.
Bow number 11. I like this coxswain, Jacqueline Luke, using her arms. I've done that before in the head of the Charles to tell the other shell when I'm the faster crew where I want them to move. It's a good move.
And that's the aforementioned Phillips Exeter, who has been atop our unofficial leaderboard coming through. So she is really coxing aggressively, and it is helping her crew, obviously, time-wise, as you see bow 9, which is Twin Cities. Twin Cities, Minnesota.
Ooh, a nice line from bow number 10.
Yep, bleeds over the buoy there.
It's Greenwich crew, bow 10. Back up with NorCal, bow 5, in hot pursuit by Three Rivers Association just behind them.
And pulling away, NorCal really showing some power there to finish off their row this morning. And NorCal coming across, and they shot to the top of our unofficial leaderboard, Colleen.
Yeah.
But again, this is very early in this event. As you see bow 13 coming through Elliott. Bow 13 is Camp Randall out of Madison, Wisconsin. Right behind them I saw Connecticut Boat Club, CBC, in bow 17. And there's a lot of experience in that boat.
riding now with that Camp Randall shell. That was Dana Anderson in the coxswain seat, and then panning back now to the finish. So for folks perhaps a little bit less familiar with the river when we're panning back and forth, our vantage point is now the finish as we're holding those shots as the athletes come through the yellow buoys marking the end. And when we get that up close and personal shot, they're in the last 600 meters or so, 650 meters. So cutting towards the very last stretch of these races in the women's youth fours.
Coming around the turn, a couple wide. Bow 22 is the Windsor School. They're about to come past their dock. They are just ahead there of West Side Rowing, bow 20.
Isabella Liu in the coxswain seat for the Windsor crew. Olivia Hochberg in the bow. Courtney Fitzmaurice in the 2 seat. Evelyn Wells in the 3, and Imogene Cabot stroking the shell.
They should get a jolt knowing that they're right next to their boathouse. I'm sure their family and friends are on the dock.
It's true. This is their turn, isn't it? And she's got a great line as she comes towards it. Isabel Liu in the coxswain seat.
Probably as familiar with that 200-meter stretch of water of any coxswain we will see all day long.
So 84 entries in the women's youth four. We'll have the opportunity to see the 8s in just a bit. Coming by this the dock off the shore that you can see where their spectators are. And an 8 is about 20 strokes, maybe 25, and a 4 at the tip of that dock. They're now through that chute, and wow, tightly packed here.
Yep, bow 23 in the blue is Milwaukee Rowing Club, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they've coordinated their pigtails.
Coached by Roger Huffman. Peyton Bradford in the coxswain seat. You can see those bright sunglasses and her visor. Beatrice Louderman in the bow seat, Willa Fuller, Audra Chesney, Cecilia Engel in the stroke.
Yeah, Colleen, let's talk about it for a minute, what it's like being in these bow loader fours. You know, your eye line is 6 or 8 inches off the water. You feel like you're going tremendously fast, but this is a water sport, and what always stood out to me is the fact that you're going to get wet if you're in that bow loader as a coxswain, and the Charles River is not quite so warm.
It's brutal. Yeah, kudos to the coxswains. These are tough athletes too. So much strategy in this race. It's called a coxswain's race, the coxswain's race, for good reason. They're kind of doing 2 things at once, right? They're steering a really difficult course, and they're calling the race.
That was Holy Names Academy coming across the line. Holy Names women's school, women's only school in Seattle, Washington. As you see, about 27, that's Maritime Rowing Club out of East Norwalk, Connecticut, with actually an average age of 16 in that boat. So some younger athletes, as you see, Gwinnett Mercy Academy from Gwinnett Valley, Pennsylvania, bow 25, and bow 36 trying to pass them is Pelham Community Rowing Association. So Pelham obviously having a tremendous race, as you see them trying to pass bow 25 at this point.
Yeah, she's going for the inside line, isn't she? That's Dana Shear in the coxswain seat in bow 36, the PCRA shell. And it looks like she's achieved that.
There is such a distinctive sound to the voice of the coxswain coming through the Cox box and into those speakers, it just adds this distinctive sound where it almost we got a little bit of the audio there. Everyone sort of sounds the same, Colleen, through that mechanism. They're talking into a microphone, are the coxswains, and there are speakers in the boat so the rowers can hear what the coxswain has to say. As you see that coxswain really willing her women on to the finish line. That was about 26, City Island rowing out of Bronx, New York, finishing.
Yeah, it's, I think eventually as a coxswain, you learn to shout from deep within your voice, because it can be quite straining. Learn how to use the voice a bit more. For now, though, we're getting a little bit of a collision just before Elliott between bows 39. We're going to name for the other shell soon. Bow 38. Unfortunately, several crews trying to get through the Elliott Bridge. Good day for bow 38, though. Friends of Brookline Rowing. They're going to cruise on by. Bow 35. That was Newton County Day School.
Yeah, really great decision there by Brookline, the coxswain, to just get out of the way and get around those crews. And thankfully, looking back at the big turn, we're not seeing two. We see one come into the picture now, but we're not seeing, for instance, several boats, as these boats are almost horizontal under Elliott right now.
Friends of Concord crew coming up, so they'll need to look out for the collision under the shell. They need to get out of the arch, truly, to let the rest of the crews behind them move on. But it's looking good for Brookline, isn't it? This looks pleasant.
It is. This is Sunday at the Charles, and you've got 84 entries in the Women's Youth 4, and we were bound to see some action like that at some point in the race course, as it looks like we're finally getting those boats straight and out, and a couple more wide coming through Elliott. So I think we're good now, Colleen, on that little skirmish that occurred. As you see, about 40 coming through, and they may have even taken the other arch, I'm not sure, but that's Friends of Concord, New Hampshire. And behind them, that is about 42, the orange and blue of Wilmington Youth Rowing.
Yeah, it's a great point, because this is when you need to know which arches you can go through. Even though center is preferred, if there's a traffic jam in the middle of the center arch and you are allowed to take the right arch, which you are for Elliott, that's the best way to do it, even if you have to course correct coming out. So it's really important, and part of what makes this so challenging for coxswains to know the course and the scullers and coxless boats.
So just looking at our timing graphic as it catches up, it's unofficial, but if it holds up, Woodrow Wilson has taken the first place spot by only half a second. So that's how close it was over 3 miles here on the Charles River between Woodrow Wilson Senior High School and Phillips Exeter Academy. But again, we have 84 entries in this event, so half the boats still have not even come past the shots we're giving you from the CBC Boathouse and the Windsor Dock. As you see, about 43 coming through. That's the Groton School, Groton, Massachusetts. And their biography of the Groton School says that, like everyone else in New England, they weren't able to row at all in 2020, and really that is the case for most of the nation. And everybody's biographies that we have read all weekend long have just talked about how excited everyone is to be back.
Reunited. That's Eugen Lim in the coxswain seat, 18 years old. Letita Casperson in the bow seat. You see the number on her back. Sophia Dang in the 2 seat. Robin Huntington in the 3, and Ann Lee in the stroke seat.
Look at all those 8s getting ready to move up there. We're going to see something like 85 youth 8s as well in a couple of events. We're going to actually have the Director's Challenge Women's Quads after these Women's Youth 4s as we continue to go 2 wide through Elliott.
It's looking like maybe there's enough spacing for folks to get through here successfully.
You can see just how bunched up these boats get as they move down the race course. They pass, get past, There's all kinds of things going on. You saw about 54 come through on your screen. That's Triangle Rowing from Raleigh, North Carolina. That's about 51 in the picture. Pittsford crew, Pittsford, New York.
Madison Marshall sits up. She's in the coxswain seat just to look over her shoulder, make sure she's got a clear line.
Yeah, at this point in the race, I don't really blame the bow woman for not communicating. She's probably seeing red to some extent, trying to figure out what energy is left to finish this race over the next 500 meters.
Caitlin Wilmarth in the bow seat. Pittsburgh crew about 51, and then it's getting pretty heated around this big turn, isn't it?
Some more spicy action coming at Elliott Bridge. About 57 is Newton Country Day out of Brighton, Mass. And right behind them is the Lawrenceville School out of Princeton Junction, New Jersey. And all these coxswains taking tremendous turns there and staying out of each other's way so far. As you see that coxswain in the yellow shell, and she is asking for that boat to yield. She wanted that inside of the turn. She's trying to make sure, coming through Elliott, she's got the course that she wants, being very emphatic about it.
Yeah, it's too late now. Her focus, and it looks like that's exactly what she's doing, is on the starboard turn. So you don't want the shell on her left side to move in front of her at all. Now she wants to wrap around the starboard, but it's a really tricky part of the course. It's essentially one lane of traffic that one line that these coxswains want to take. Here comes bow 58 though. That's the Lawrenceville crew charging up behind bow 57. 61 Unionville. Super close between these coxswains.
And I'm sorry that I said she, because the coxswain is male in that 64, as we have an unbelievable, memorable shot there.
Wow. Lucas Van Witzenberg in the coxswain seat for bow 64.
Yeah, we have been talking all weekend long, Colleen, about just what happens with these boats, and sometimes they're coming together, etc. As you see, a little bit more carnage here next to the Windsor dock. So Lucas was asking for the boat to yield. It did not yield, and we were talking with Lindsay about how it's called adjudication here, but you've got officials all throughout the race course, and obviously, actually Lucas, in my mind, was doing himself a favor because he's sitting up and he's showing the officials that he's asking for the crew to yield, that it didn't appear that it did yield to him there.
Yeah, and of course it's a bit like driving, right? So everyone thinks they're right. So the official, it's their job to decide who was actually moving faster in that moment that had the right of way. Another collision here between 65 and 69. Dallas United crew in 65, Texas Rowing Center in 69, and 72 cruises on by. That's SA Rowing Club.
So both those crews came from Texas, and they found themselves finding each other physically on the race course as they came into Elliott. So you've got Dallas and you've got a crew from Austin that unfortunately came together there as you see this crew finish.
Swan Creek Rowing Club, bow 53.
Saw them at the hotel this morning.
Wow, that's nice.
That is bow 72 coming through, St. Andrews Rowing out of Roswell, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And they fortunately have found clear water coming through Elliott.
Coxswain Grace and Sotera, 18 years old. Just behind her, Hollis Andreen, 14 years old in the bow seat. So a mix of age range.
And just behind them, Texas Rowing Center. I can't see the colors because of our morning sun, but I saw the Lone Star flag on those blades.
And here's Newton County Day once again.
One thing that does certainly happen when those boats come together is that once they get moving again, there will be just an amazing amount of adrenaline in all of those athletes, and oftentimes you see them come up to speed very quickly and maybe even go tremendously faster than they were prior to coming together.
77, Buckingham, Brown, and Nicholas. Corinne Yang in the stroke seat.
BB&N, another team that is no stranger to the Charles River.
Coxswain seat, I meant to say. Connie Yang in the coxswain seat.
There you see bow 75, East Bay in the bright green. East Bay out of Barrington, Rhode Island.
Hard to miss those bright green jerseys. So last stretch of their race, a point in the race course where these athletes are fatigued. They've been working really hard for 2.5 miles. They've got about 500-600 meters left as they come out of that Elliott Bridge and pick up the straightaway. About 750 to go or so as they come through the bridge. This is bout number 76, Arlington Belmont.
I think we've got them going through the smaller arch. It looks like
right.
Where they are going. First one of those we've seen this morning, but it's better to keep going, even though you got to be on the rudder a little bit coming out of that arch than some of the prior coming together experiences that we have watched in this event. That's bow 79, White Rock out of Dallas, Texas.
And now we pan back to the finish in the last 10 strokes or so. Picking up the stroke rate, looks like here, putting on a bit of a sprint as they come through that yellow finish chute.
That was Dallas United. Their biography says they're all under 17 athletes, and then finishing right behind them, bow 73, Miami Rowing Club, who were the Florida State champions when I announced that regatta at Benderson Park. That's bow 81 coming through, which is Riverfront Recapture, Hartford, Connecticut. The next event that we're going to go to shortly is the Director's Challenge Women's Quads. As we finish up our 84 women's youth fours this morning, Colleen, and that is more side-by-sides than we have seen all weekend. Towards the end there under Elliott, and several boats coming together.
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting racing, difficult to steer. Tremendous hat tip to all of these coxswains.
That's Port Rowing, Port Washington, New York, finishing their regatta.
Clear.
Another under 17 crew, coxed by Perry McLaughlin, coached by Isa Abdur Rahman. And it's a beautiful sight to see that finish chute, have no one else around you after you've worked so hard to get through the course. Coxswains and rowers alike. So this is a nice part of the race to pick up the straightaway, one of the few true straightaways in the course.
Go back up.